Andre Bazin was a French film theorist and cinema critic whose theories about cinema influenced many filmmakers during the French New Wave. Published in 1958 and translated into English by Hugh Gray, Andre Bazin's first volume, The Ontology of the Photographic Image, begins by analyzing the fundamental elements of photography in an effort to better understand man's desire for realism. First mechanical systems of reproduction came with Da Vinci's camera obscura, followed by the camera of Nipsey, which is regarded as the first camera in existence. With photography, Bazin said, artists were now in the position to create the illusion of 3D space within which things appear to exist as our eyes in reality see them. With the rise in photography is where Bazin observes a divide in the types of paintings being produced. Some were purely aesthetic. They were expressions of a spiritual reality, one that differed greatly from images in the real world and where symbols transcend its model. And some were purely psychological, meant to, essentially, duplicate images within the real world. Bazin goes on to describe an ornate need that humans have for the dramatic. He said the need for illusion is a purely mental need, of itself non-aesthetic, the origins of which must be sought in the proclivity of the mind towards magic. Furthermore, he claims that the quarrel over realism in art stems from a misunderstanding, from a confusion between true realism, the need that is to give significant expression to the world both concretely and in its essence, and the pseudo-realism of a deception aimed at fooling the eye, and for that matter, the mind. Is pseudo-realism content, in other words, with illusory appearances? Is one of these forms better than the other? Of course not. But, as Bazin said, the great artist, of course, has always been able to combine the two tendencies. They have allotted to each its proper place in the hierarchy of things, holding reality at their command and molding it at will into fabric of their art. Avatar, the 2009 film directed by James Cameron, was the highest-grossing film of all time, making over $2 billion in the box office and running in theaters for 34 weeks. The film was raved over by critics, who mostly discussed the incredible special effects done in the making of the film. But more importantly, the film combines Andre Bazin's ideas of realism and pseudo-realism, also sometimes referred to as formalism, in a miraculous way. Being shown here is a notable scene that pushes the boundaries of realism in cinema. Of course, the film is clearly fantasy, with floating mountains, blue people, and flying horse-like creatures, but with the technologically advanced special effects used, the filmmakers attempted to make the film's style as realistic as possible. Stereoscopic filmmaking and a meticulous attention to detail also contributed to the realism of the film. In Avatar, and in modern filmography as a whole, there are many examples of aesthetic images and psychological images being combined into classicism. Overall, realism in cinema has taken a shift in recent years, mainly due to advancements in the field of special effects, as well as the desire filmmakers have to push the envelope of what can be done with the camera today. However, Bazin believed that cinema should be in the pursuit of objective reality, and that the interpretation of a film should be left entirely up to the spectator. He advocated for the use of wide shots and long takes with the camera at eye level. He believed that editing should be limited in order to not disrupt the natural flow of the film, essentially mimicking the perspective of a human being observing the events. This scene from the 2006 film Children of Men, directed by Alfonso Cuarón, is an example of realism. This method is also present in contemporary photography. One example of the merging of realism and pseudo-realism, or aesthetic and psychological images, is in long exposure images in photography. These photographs take an image from the real world and alter them through the camera lens itself. Modern media has also attempted to produce a series of animated images that have the intention of seeming real. Now that we have the technology, the gaming industry in particular has been attempting this feat more and more in recent years. The video game Far Cry 3 is an example of this. With the advanced animation, wide angle, and POV shots, the game wants us to feel as if we are immersed in a real-world experience. Bazin's overall argument rests in the idea that the need for illusion has not ceased to trouble the heart of painting since the 16th century. Just as this was a reality of 20th century painters, it is true of photographers, filmmakers, game designers, and many other artists today. Andre Bazin describes a shift from realism to pseudo-realism with the invention of the camera. Since then, the camera is being manipulated itself in a multitude of artistic ways, and our so-called obsession with realism is a thing of the past.